Good afternoon. My name is Alex Gomez. First off, can I get a show of hands of how many people want to lose money and increase deadly air pollution? Nobody? I didn't think so. Okay, that's why I'm here to tell you that it is important that the youth of today's society carefully examine the weakness of hybrid vehicles, because when it is all said and done, the advantages of a gas-powered vehicle simply outweigh those of a hybrid. The state's PHEV did some plug-in studies stating that alternative vehicles, known as hybrids, offer benefits, but no single technology currently stand out as a clear choice. So, my major claim is that traditional cars are a better alternative to hybrid cars. I'm going to address this through 3 points. The first being how hybrids are more costly than gas-powered vehicles, and the second being hybrids have false statistics of conservation, and the third being the pollution of hybrids that the hybrids generate. So on my first point, whether or not to get a hybrid depends on which car you are driving in and what conditions you are driving through. Lauren DeAngelis, an online reader and editor for U.S. News and World Report, writes that because hybrids cost more than gasoline-powered models, it is not necessarily cost-effective to buy one, even when taking into account the money you'll save on gas. Someone who drives a Honda Civic hybrid averages about 42 miles per gallon, and they save around $600 a year. But the stock price is around $8,000 more. It's around $8,000 more than a stock price. So this person would have to drive the Civic hybrid for around 13 years to make their money back. Rebecca Lindland, an automotive industry analysis from Global Insight, concludes that an owner of a Honda Accord hybrid would need to drive 10 to 12 years to start saving fuel, even if the Accord hybrid costs $3,000 more than the original model. This would mean that the owner would have to drive around 15,000 miles every year. This means a lot of miles will be spent on the freeway, and this means that large amount of gas will be used. Hybrids are known to have better fuel mileage than average gas engines. However, many people do not know that hybrid cars get the best gas mileage in traffic-oriented city driving, because this is when the electric motor functions primarily. In freeway driving, the gas engine is what powers the car. If you commute from afar to a certain location, the hybrid is not the best option. Just as the costs of the hybrid are high, the statistics also are exaggerated. So going on to my second point, people have been given inflated ratings and therefore false impression of how conservative the hybrid vehicle actually is. David Linhart, a business and economics columnist for the New York Times, writes that hybrids have the most overblown mileage ratings in the auto industry. The Prius is said to get around 55 miles per gallon, but Consumer Reports say that the car actually only gets 44 miles per gallon, which is still substantially high, but it's not what the consumer is guaranteed. It seems that there are fuel inefficient cars when it comes to whenever a manufacturer sells a hybrid, it seems that they sell a few extremely fuel inefficient cars soon after. David Keelan, a USA Today reporter, wanted to see if the hybrid cars actually conserved fuel, so he drove a Volkswagen Jetta from Detroit to Washington, D.C. He then drove a Toyota Prius back from Washington, D.C. to Detroit, and his studies showed that the Jetta was actually more fuel efficient than the Prius. The Jetta averaged around 44 miles per gallon, while the Prius only did 38 miles per gallon, which is far below the 51 miles per gallon guarantee. Not only do hybrids cost more and have false ratings, but they also pollute the earth more than people are aware of. For my third point, traditional cars and CUVs do not, in fact, emit pollutants. However, hybrid vehicles are not better, as they also emit dangerous toxins. Because 49% of electricity produced in the U.S. is generated using coal, pollution is produced by the electrical power plants that need to make batteries for the hybrid plug-in cars. Healy explains that if plug-in hybrids were charged using clean electricity, studies have proven that plug-ins will produce more sulfur dioxide than gas-powered vehicles or normal hybrids. And they also produce, according to the environmental advocacy group Natural Resources Defense Council, that there is a possibility for increase in soot and mercury. So, by looking at all the weaknesses in a hybrid vehicle, it becomes apparent that they are no better than gasoline-powered cars, and that it would save humans a lot of money to avoid hybrids. So the next time you think about going green, keep in mind that when you buy a hybrid, you are actually doing more harm than good.
All right, I was a little concerned at the beginning because of the term better in the proposition. That's really a value claim. I think you need a more objective term for a proposition of fact. The secondary issues seem to suggest some factual criteria, either efficiency or limiting pollution or accuracy in data would be appropriate terms, and then I think you could find a more appropriate term than better in your main proposition. I thought you did a pretty good job signposting those secondary points before you got to them, and an excellent job when you got to them in the body of the speech, letting us know where you were at any given time. That worked pretty well. You also had good explanations on each of the points about why things work the way they do or how you are making the inferences that you're making. There was some interesting evidence that you had. By the way, I like the attention device too. I thought that was a funny way of getting started on the topic. Some of the evidence, for instance, is pretty creative. You got the information about the fuel efficiency. You had the one study where they drove the Jetta cross country and then they drove the Prius back, and I thought that that was an interesting contrast in terms of mileage. That worked pretty well. That's a nice example. And then there was some other statistical information on several of the other points. That was okay. The issue about plug-in hybrids, I think that goes a little bit off track, although if you could show, for instance, the plug-in hybrids are really the coming thing, and that's what people are going to be purchasing because they're going to do combination electric vehicles and hybrid vehicles, then maybe it would be a little bit more relevant. But it sounds to me like you're broadening your claim at that point rather than focusing on the original claim. A pretty good citation to the evidence during the body of the speech. Like I said, I thought your internal signposting was also very clear. There are a couple of problems with delivery. You have a tendency to do way too much reading. You got your hand in the pocket. Pacing's a little bit awkward, and pronunciation of some of the language is problematic. A word like soot should not be difficult to get to, and it just feels a little bit like you got the data, you plugged it into the speech, and you didn't really think about practicing it or getting used to it, and it sounds too much like it's only the first or second time that you're going through it instead of really being an argument that you've built up. I think you've got good information here. It just feels a little bit like it's been underprepared because of the presentation, that's all. All right, thank you.